Hi, good morning. I'm Christy Jones. I own Sales Acceleration Group. So I actually spend my entire 365 days a year with folks like you. So I specialize in early stage startups. Most of my clients are 0 to 5 million in revenue. They have about 75% of them have some funding, whether that be seed or Series A funding. The rest are bootstrapped. I mostly work in technology, so SaaS is normally my swim lane. I do three things for my clients. Thing one, I do process build out or improvement. Again, if it's a zero client, as I affectionately call some of you, no CRM system, nothing written down, it's all in your head, founder-led sales, right? I build everything out. So before we want to go and hire our first sales rep, which we're going to spend our entire hour talking about, I make sure that we have everything written down. So I'm going to build out your playbook. I'm going to get your CRM system set up. I'm a HubSpot partner. So most of my clients are using HubSpot because HubSpot gives a startup discount. So if you've gotten certain funding, there's a drastic, I think it's even 60% off year one. It tiers down, I think by year 3 or 4, you're paying full in. But I set up the CRM system, dashboards, custom fields, reports, all of that fun stuff. And then when we're done with all of that, so everything from building out, writing down ICP and personas all the way through the sales cycle itself, and I create a lot of helpful guides for my clients. Then we're ready to hire our first sales rep, which is thing 2 I do. I've been in business 8 years. I didn't always start out by the hiring help, as I affectionately call it. So I'm not a recruiter. I don't source. I don't charge percentage-based salary. But I'm not a non-for-profit, so I do charge you. But I got tired of walking in and seeing people had mishired, right? The difference between hunter, farmer, gatherer, which we're going to talk about. So finally somebody said to me, if you think you can do it better, then do it. And I said, that's fine. So I will. So I hire everything from SDRs through SVPs. I just hired a CRO for a company in the UK that I was working with. I don't do marketing is not my swim lane, so I try to stay out of that world. But customer success, I'm a former Gainsight executive. For those of you who are familiar with the customer success software Gainsight, I'm a former Gainsight executive, so customer success is also my swim lane. And then the third thing I do is I do fractional sales leadership, although I would prefer to call it interim because I don't want to stay forever. But right now I have 2 fractional gigs. One, I am leading an SDR team out of Bucharest, Romania. And the second one, I'm leading an onboarding, support, and CSM team also out of Bucharest, Romania. So I'm used to being up early, usually a lot earlier than this. So I start my day on the European side and then work my way to the US. I have a very direct communication style. My hashtag is own your own shit, so that's what we're going to do today. I also have a very interactive style. So if you've got questions, I'd rather take them in the moment. Like, I'm not going to, there's no agenda for Q&A at the end. If you've got a question, raise your hand. Let's deal with it in the moment so nobody forgets and that we can all, work from the material that we're going through. I work, like I said, with a ton of founders that are coming out of founder-led sales. Most recently, I had a company on the East Coast who just got funded by a local VC, Lewis & Clark. A lot of my clients come from VC introductions and recommendations. So I call myself an extra set of expertise hands. But most recently, I did that, and I probably have 3 or 4 clients a year where we're moving from founder-led sales into hiring your first sales rep. So on page 1 is a little checklist. So let's go through this. Let's be honest with ourselves. Only you need to see it. I will not collect anything at the end of our session. So let's talk about if you're really ready to move from founder-led selling into building out a sales team, whether that is an SDR to help to set appointments for you, the founder, or whether or not that is you're like, you know what, like I'm done. I'm the tech guy or girl, and selling is not comfortable for me, and I would like to replace myself with a real salesperson. So the first thing I say is, are you really ready to let someone else raise your baby? And not every founder that I talk to is actually ready for that, right? You built it. This is your blood, sweat, and tears. You've been coding in your basement or in your garage. You've been probably working your 40-hour-week job while doing this on the side in some cases, right? And you've been the first salesperson. So you are very attached to this child, right? You're a single parent raising an only child, and this has been your whole world. You gotta be really honest with yourself, because if the first sales rep comes in and you're not really ready to let go, then you're going to set them up for failure, either intentionally or unintentionally, consciously or unconsciously, right? So it's very nice to have someone else come in with new ideas But if you're not open to those, if you think your way is the only way, and I will reference my unnamed client on the East Coast, had a really hard time with this, right? He thought that there was one way to do it, his way, it had worked for him. But what I shared with him is, that's because your name is founder, right? And when your name is founder or CEO, people take your call. People set a meeting with you. People are willing to give you feedback on your product. People seem open to having a demo with you, right? So it's not ever going to be as easy for the next person who comes in after you to sell initially, right? Because they're not going to be on the friends and family program like you as the founder might be, right? And your connections and those kind of things. So I think you got to be open and honest with yourself about, am I really ready to do that? Are you qualified then? So what happens when you hire your first sales rep? Are you qualified to be the sales leader, or are you not qualified to be the sales leader? And again, that's why I get a lot of my fractional gigs, because people are like, yeah, not really, maybe so much. In some cases, it's worked out fine, right? In some cases, I've seen a lot of founders move into sales leadership. But I think you just got to decide what you're going to do. The other problem I had with the founder on the East Coast was he had been so far removed from his real job as founder and CEO. Other people had taken that, right? He had outsourced a lot of the different roles that he as CEO and founder needed to do to other people in the organization or fractional people. And so all of a sudden there was like a moment of panic where he wasn't sure what he was going to do. What will I do? Like, what will my role be? How will I fill 50 hours a week? Because that's what I've been doing. I've been playing salesperson for 30 hours a week. And so he's been a little far removed from the business, which made him a little bit uncomfortable. So I would ask you to be honest and ask yourself some of those questions. Here are some other things you need to be asking yourself. Do I have product market fit yet? If you don't have product market fit, we can't hand the baby off to someone else to raise, right? If you don't have it on a feeding schedule, right? If it's still, taking formula or breast milk, you can't hand it off to somebody else, right? Like, it's too new. Do you know who your ICP is? You may have to change your ICP over time. Your persona or your ICP that you picked initially might not be the right people. That's okay, pivot's good, we love pivot, but we gotta start somewhere. Like, we have to have some idea who we built this for, right? Chances are, this is my favorite founder story, chances are that you were working for the man and you had a problem. And you went out into the market to solve your problem, and either you didn't like what you found in the marketplace or it wasn't what you needed, and so you built it yourself, right? This is my typical favorite founder story. So you know who you built it for, but there may be other uses for it, right? There may be other people, other use cases that could take place. Have you identified your SAM, not your TAM? Some new people came in while you were out, so they may, if you raise your hand if you don't have a handout and you've just joined. All right. So the total addressable market, that goes in your pitch deck. You have yourself, maybe one or two salespeople. You can't actually deal with your target addressable market. So you need to deal with your SAM, your serviceable addressable market. Okay? So are you going to own your backyard? Are you going to own a specific vertical industry? Are you going to just target certain types of personas? Okay, we cannot boil the ocean, right? No matter how wide your product could be, you need to make sure that you can take and own this little piece of the world, and let's go after it. For those of you who are in the dev world, I call them sprints, sales sprints, right? So for 8 weeks or something like that, decide, like, I'm going to go after this. I'm going to go after healthcare for 8 weeks. I'm going to see how that goes. If it goes really well, I'm going to continue to go after healthcare. If it doesn't really go well, I'm going to go after manufacturing. Manufacturing sticks, I'm going to stick with manufacturing. So you got to get real narrow, right? Like, just what I said I did. When I first came up here, I said I do 0 to 5 million. It's all I do, right? That's a very small subset of SaaS companies, startup world, those type of things. Okay, do we understand what fit looks like? So one of the things I do is I build out discovery questions for my clients, and the whole goal of asking discovery questions is, do I have fit? So let me give you my definition of fit. Fit is someone who has a problem that your product or service can solve, that they want to solve, and they're willing to pay to do so. Okay? If they're not a fit, they could be what I affectionately call an NRN, and not right now, right? I don't really believe in no. A very small subset of your SAM or TAM is unqualified, if you have done your work, right? Now, what is unqualified? What could be unqualified? Unqualified could be we're getting ready to do a merger and acquisition, like you are going to sell into the SMB, the small mid-market business. They're getting ready to be acquired by IBM, right? Not a fit. Like there's very few people who aren't fits. Most of it's about timing, right? They're NRNs, they're not right nows. So the thing I see most happen is that people put things into their pipeline with their rose-colored glasses on and said, oh, this is totally going to be a client. They're perfect. Well, they're not perfect if they don't want to solve their problem right now and they don't have money to do so. Okay? They're NRNs. We need to figure out how to nurture them. That's a different session for a different day. Do you understand your sales cycle? You don't have to have it all in the CRM system, but you have to know, like, you know, here's typically what my sales cycles look like with my clients. Fit identified. I can't identify fit if I haven't had a discovery call. So step one, I've had a discovery call and I've identified fit. Step two, I've shown them, we do show and tell as I affectionately call it, product fit identified. Step three, verbal agreement. At that point, they go, okay, I talked to you initially, sounded like you might be able to fix my problem. Now I've seen your product or service. I agree, you can fix the problem. And I want to fix it, and I have money, verbal agreement. Okay? From there, it could go a lot of different ways depending on how long your sales cycle is. But it could go to negotiation, it could go to proposal sent, could go to quote, could go a lot of different places. But do you understand, again, if it's in your head, that's fine. If it's in your head, we can get it on paper. If it's not in your head, or you're not doing it the same way every time, or that means it's not baked out yet, right? You're still beta testing it, which is fine, but you're not ready for a sales rep. CRM system, this is critical. Why? Because we have to hold people accountable. And the best way to hold people accountable is by having them put shit in the CRM system that we build reports and dashboards around. The data don't lie. Okay, if you're not ready to gather data in a CRM system, then maybe we're not ready for a sales rep. By the way, HubSpot also has a free version of their CRM system, right? Okay, who are we going to call? We have to have a database. So databases out there, from the most expensive Cadillac, ZoomInfo. Others, Apollo, which is also a CRM system if you want the twofer. Seamless.ai. There are lots of them. If by chance you decide to outsource your first sales rep, meaning probably an SDR, and if I'm using lingo, because God knows we have lingo, if I'm using lingo and you don't understand it, like is there anybody who doesn't understand what SDR or BDR stands for? Thank you for being honest. Sales development rep, business development rep. Titles are cheap, business cards are cheaper, call them whatever the hell you want. They're a prospector for you. So if you're the founder and you still want to be the closer, you can hire an SDR, BDR, or an outsourced SDR, BDR company to get appointments for you. Okay? So yeah, sorry, we got lingo. So stop me when lingo is confusing for you. How about pricing? Okay, pricing changes all the time. Don't feel bad about that. There's no shame in changing your pricing. But do we have one or two? I mean, again, East Coast client changed pricing in January of this year, like drastically changed pricing. From a MRR model, by the way, I'm not an MRR fan. The reason why customer success got started is because when VC started funding companies back in the day, and I'm old enough I was around when that happened, monthly recurring revenue is high risk. Every month, the accounting person has to justify paying that bill. And when money gets tight, MRR gets cut. So I would encourage you to at least think about the ARR model, annual recurring revenue. Again, whether you want to pay for onboarding and implementation, there's all kinds of ways that you can get your money. But do you have some idea how you're going to price this? Have you sold some of this to friends and family? Have people decided that that seems like a fair price for what you're offering? Doesn't mean we can't change it. Doesn't mean we can't raise the price. Just means we have to have some idea what's going on with pricing. Okay. Do we have anything written down? Anywhere? Spiral notebook? Not totally picky. Google Doc would be better. Do we have anything written down? ICP, personas, prospecting processes or strategies, cadences or sequences. Does everybody know what I mean by cadence or sequence? Okay, so CRM systems, so HubSpot has sequences. Outreach.io and SalesLoft have cadences. These are automated prospecting tools. So you put a person, we prospect people, not companies, right? So you put a contact in, day 1 an email goes out. Day 2 a task comes up for you to make a phone call. Day 3 a second email goes out. And we want to connect with them on LinkedIn. So basically you just work from your task list, it's automated. And so it tells you what to do every day. So if you have an SDR or a BDR, and these are mostly affectionately kids out of college, most likely, they don't have to think, right? An adult has built the cadence or sequence for them. They just need to come in and work their task list, and it tells them what to do every single day. Documented discovery questions. I document these for my clients. I document them, by the way, Christyism, discovery is not an event, it is a process. Every time you get on the phone with a prospect, you should be asking questions. Because the questions you ask to determine fit are not the same questions you want to ask at the end about, does legal need to review it? Does it have to go to procurement? Do we need a PO? Who needs to actually sign it if you're not the signer? Chances are slim at about 10% or less that as you sell throughout your career or you hire people who are going to sell throughout their career, that the person who is your main contact is going to sign anything. So who the heck's going to sign it, right? We got to know those kind of things. Sales cycle processes, we sort of just talked through that, right? Fit identified, product fit identified, verbal agreement, such. Negotiation process. Are you going to give your sales reps any negotiating power? Once I get comfortable and they've earned the right, as I say, I give them normally a 10% variance, but I'm on the give-get program. If we're going to give, then we're going to get. Get could be, if I'm an early stage company, get could be a testimonial, a case study, things you desperately need. Might be a referral to 3 other people in their circle that might be good prospects for us. It could be, I like to give. I don't like to give on price. I like to give on terms. So 13 for 12 is my favorite. 13 months for the price of 12. Give them a free month. Lots of things I like to do there. How about referral strategy? This comes at the end. I'll be honest with you. This is something I do very, very late stage for my clients because you have to have clients to get referrals. And normally this is a product of the customer success or account management team doing this for you. So best time to do this if you're sending out NPS surveys, promoters, right? 8s, 9s, and 10s. They just renewed. Happy. They just come out of onboarding. They actually said the best time to get a referral is right after you've gone through implementation or onboarding. That's a highly handheld 5-star experience. And they didn't, they were overwhelmed coming in and you've laid everything out for them and they're so happy. That's a great time to get a referral because nothing's gone wrong yet, right? Everybody's still everybody's still happy and rosy. And then objection handling strategies. When I do sales training, I teach the following for objections. We handle objections by asking questions to seek to better understand. That's the Christyism for objection handling. So I tell my clients, give me every objection you've ever heard. From I'm headed to a meeting, that's an objection, by the way, to, can't nail down legal. So give me everything that's slowing down or stopping you from selling something, and then I and my team create 3 questions for every objection. First off, objections are not always what they appear to be on the surface. Secondly, we got to really dig down. A lot of times also objections happen to be miscommunications, right? It's a lot of information. I mean, in a typical sales cycle, you and the prospect are probably going to spend anywhere between 6 and 10 hours together. Miscommunication is going to happen during that period of time. All right, take a minute. Told you we're not going to turn these in. Check boxes. Can you check 7? While you're doing that, over in the right-hand corner, I've given you a QR code and access to about a 7 or 8 page document I put together a while ago on how to recognize rock star talent, the things that you're looking for during interviewing and meeting with people. Do you need a handout? Sorry. Okay, if you're comfortable, has anybody been able to check 7 or more boxes? Okay, cool. That's why you're here, right? Good. All right, let's move on. And then if I could get a 10-minute warning when I'm 10 minutes out, that would be fabulous. Thank you. Because I could go for 4 hours. All right, so you gotta know what you're looking for, right? So let's start by talking about the different types of sales reps. Hunters, farmers, and gatherers. So my first Christyism here is hunters are not helpers. Hunters are people that give me the CRM system, give me the database, give me some messaging, maybe from marketing or maybe not. By the way, you probably don't have marketing at this point. You may have a freelancer. It would be great if you had some blog post or a white paper or something. There are a ton of freelancers in the world that would be happy to do these for very, very low money. So make sure you've got something on your website under resources when you get the website built. So hunters don't mind starting at 0 every month, as we call it, right? Like you're coming in, you don't have a book of business, your quota's $250,000, $500,000. In the kind of world I live in, most of the quota's around $1 million. But you're gonna start at 0 every month or every quarter. That doesn't scare them. They're not scared very easily. They want some resources, right? They might want, again, some sales collateral. They might want an SDR or a BDR. But hunters, and again, all SDRs and BDRs, by the way, have to be hunters. It's almost non-negotiable. They're going to be cold calling and cold emailing and cold LinkedIn messaging people. They have no fear. They cannot have any fear. Risk tolerance is through the roof, right? So I asked the following interview question to determine this. Tell me the last time, Chris, that someone said, I can't believe you just did that. Okay, hunter, right? Potentially hunter. And I say, or the other question I ask is, tell me the last time you took a risk. And then I get to decide if I thought that was risky, right? I'm like, doesn't seem like a lot of risk to me. Farmer. Farmers want to raise the baby, your baby, right? They want to know everything about the prospect, right? They're the relationship people. They know when your prospect went on vacation. They know how many kids they have. They know when their birthdays are. They know about their promotions. They know where they live. They know, all of those things, right? They're the relationship people. But sometimes the farmer has to also renew the contract or upsell the contract. So you got to decide how that's going to be laid out. This is another session for another day, the debate about whether or not farmers should be renewing or touching revenue at all, or whether they should just be the day-to-day firefighter. So most farmers are renewing revenue at some point, but the much harder job is the hunter, right? The zero job, going out and cold calling people. So the farmer, you got to decide, but those people are the relationship people, right? And so higher base salary, lower commission. By the way, the hunter, 50-50. So if you're going to pay him a total of $75,000, 50% is going to be base salary, 50% is going to be on the variable comp plan, on up. And sales leaders, 50-50. If you've got a $250,000 sales leader, it's 125, 125. Okay? Gatherer. The gatherer is interesting. The gatherer keeps what they catch, as I call it. So they're the fishermen. You can also call them the fishermen if you'd like. They keep what they catch. So they go out, they get it, but don't hand it off to anybody. In SaaS, we love to hand it off, right? Why? Because hunters don't want to raise the baby. They don't have the tolerance, right? They don't want to deal with the BS of my password reset call. They just don't. But the gatherer is kind of the combo pack, and they want to go out and get it, and then they want to keep it. There's a lot of jobs out there like this where if you hear them say like, well, I've got a book of business. I walked into a book of business. They gave me a book of business when I started. Gatherer, okay? My brother is in the staffing industry, works for a $1 billion staffing company. They don't care how he hits his target, whether it's money from existing clients or whether he has to go out to get a new client. Just get X, right? 95% of his quota every year is maintained by his existing book of business, and 5% he may have to go hunt for, but he doesn't like it. Okay, pros and cons of player coach. Oh, do we love to do this in the SaaS world? I hate it. You can probably tell I'm pretty transparent. I wrote a blog post a few years ago called, If Player Coach is Such a Good Idea, Why Isn't the NFL Doing It? Because it's not a good idea, okay? It's hard to compensate. You're asking for player and coach. You're asking for a leader and an individual contributor. People are wired differently, right? People are either going to now a few years out of college, they're probably going to be an individual contributor. They won't know what they want to do, and some of those successfully transition into leaders. But in the SaaS world, we love to take our top performer and make them a leader. It's a horrible idea for several reasons. One, we've just lost $1 million worth of revenue right off the bat, right? There's nothing, they've demonstrated probably nothing that tells you that they're a leader. I'm actually the anomaly girl, and people kind of give me the side eye when I say this. I have never earned my living as an individual contributor, ever. I've been in sales my entire life. Okay, minus the waitressing jobs in high school and college. I got out of college and spent 8 years in retail. So I did retail sales. I was a buyer at Famous Bar. I worked in the stores. I opened up the Chesterfield and the West County store before going down to the buying offices. So I did retail sales for 8 years. Then the very first job in SaaS I got was sales leader. I had no experience in SaaS sales leadership, but I had leadership skills. I've been negotiating with Marty from Mud in New York for years. Like, I had negotiation skills, right? I had leadership skills, I had negotiation skills, I had management skills. By the way, when on the leader side, I use the term leader, but let's be clear. That person is manager, leader, coach, and mentor. Just like your NFL coaches, right? Just like Nick Saban is. Poor Nick. I thought Nick was going to lose his job this weekend. Whew, it was close. All right, I've listed the sales roles. SDR, BDR, we talked about that. Account executive, hunter, quota carrying rep, 50-50. Account manager, customer success, probably a 75-25 base to variable. Relationship, raises the baby, but probably is renewing revenue at the renewal point. Sales engineer or solution consultant. This is your tech people. If you got a really complex product, at some point, your AE, your account executive, your hunter will not be demoing your product. You'll be hiring a solution consultant or a sales engineer. They are going to be 95 base, 5% variable. They are part of the sales team. They sit under the sales umbrella. They get compensated when companies that they have demoed and been involved in a technical way sell. They get bonused on that. And then your leader. Questions so far? Yes, ma'am? Can you repeat those proportions? The compensation? Yes. SDR, so SDR, BDR, by the way, we haven't talked about compensation there. That's about a 70-30. And again, if you need compensation, if you need specific compensation, reach out to me personally. I already have comp plans together for SDR, BDRs I can send you. Account executive is 50-50. Account manager, customer success is about a 75-25. I'm always starting with base, by the way. Sales engineer, 95-5. Oh, implementation onboarding specialist, base only. Base only. If you were going to incent them with bonus, it would be time to go live. Okay? If it takes 4 weeks to implement or onboard, and they can do it in less, bonus, right? Churn starts at implementation, Christyism. Churn starts at implementation. A poor implementation, a slow implementation, every time those things go poorly or they go long, your risk for not renewing them is higher. And then leader, 50-50. So what prior experience do they need to have? Again, very generic here. Your world is your world. Here's what I'll tell you. They don't have to come from your industry. They don't. If they're smart, you can teach them. If it's highly technical, you can hire a solution consultant or a sales engineer, okay? So I get a lot of people, like, again, East Coast client. Poor Sam. I keep using him as the example. Sam was one of the first 25 employees at Indeed. So he is in hiring tech, and he built himself, of course, a hiring tech product with his co-founder, who was also one of the first 25 employees at Indeed. Oh my God, it took me months to convince him that they did not have to be from Indeed or Monster or any of the other hiring platforms out there. In fact, it was a horrible idea. Do you know why? Because Indeed only has account management. They don't have hunters anymore. Why? Because does anybody in the room not know what Indeed is? That's why, right? When you become a brand name like that, you don't need as many hunters as you need people, because now you've got all these clients you need to manage. So we couldn't even find hunters within the Indeed ecosystem, okay? How many years experience do you want them to have? Okay, I mean, you've got a high risk situation. You're hiring your very first person. They should have some experience, right? 1 to 3 years, 2 to 3 years, 2 to 4 years. Like, don't start at zero, right? And probably, like, again, if they've been an SDR or BDR with you for a year, sure. I think we could probably take a chance on that, right? But you need someone who, no offense, knows more about sales than you do. Yes?
So for technical people like engineers, how do you know that they are ready to transition
It's more about personality, right? So Brent is my favorite example of this. I was working with Brent. He was on the engineering side, more of a project management at Gainsight. And one day I ended up playing ping pong with him. Ping pong, we love our startup, our beer fridge and our ping pong table. Playing ping pong with him, and I was like, you're not the guy who codes in your boxers in your basement. You're kind of a different breed. So I started talking to him. I said, you're on the wrong team. You need to come to the dark side. And he goes, oh no, that's hard. Like sales is really hard, and that starting at zero thing. Like I've heard you talk about that. Like that's not for me. And I was like, I don't know. I think you're wrong. And then he comes to me one day, and the company says to him, hey, we'd like you to be a solution consultant, sales engineer. And so he comes to me and he goes, companies approach me about sales engineer. I'm like, genius, it's perfect. You don't have a quota, you love people, you're outgoing, you're an extrovert, and you've got all the technical skills. So it's really more about them being open to the concept. You are never gonna force a developer who likes to code in their boxers in their basement to go in front of a client. And it's a horrible idea, right? They're so uncomfortable. But you'll be able to, they're easy to identify. If you've got some sales skills yourself, these people are very easy to identify because they get into a meeting and they actually speak, right? Like if you approach them about like, hey, I've got an idea for a new feature. They're like, oh, okay, well, you want to grab a beer over? You want to go to lunch? The regular developer won't ask you that, right? They'll be like, okay, can you just send me a document outlining what you want? Okay, it's a personality thing. Let's see, industry experience. Again, I've already given you my opinion about this. Again, if you think you can find somebody, here are the horrible stories. Here are like the bad stories. Another client came from the restaurant industry. 2 co-founders, both from the restaurant industry, and they, again, were determined to only hire people from the restaurant industry. Well, restaurateurs, people grew up in that world, again, at waited tables for 6 years through high school and college, not necessarily salespeople. Really good logisticians, really good operations people, not really good sellers. Just because they come from the industry doesn't mean they can sell. I'd rather you find someone who was born and bred to sell and then teach them your industry. No offense, but industries for the most part are not that hard to figure out, right? Let's see. Again, what market size? A lot of my clients, as I get closer to that $5 million mark, start to think about doing enterprise. Everybody's definition of enterprise is different. I'm currently working with a company that has a SaaS product for scoping. They're called ScopeStack. This is a good story, so I'll give you their name, ScopeStack. And John at ScopeStack decided he wants to start going after enterprise. I said, well, okay, everybody's definition of enterprise is different. What is your definition of enterprise? So again, we got the group together so we get consensus. $50 million and above revenue. Well, that's not most people's enterprise, right? That's not Fortune 5000. That's a lot lower than that. That's what I would call mid-market. So it's okay, but you got to decide. By the way, there's more fish in the SMB world than there is in the enterprise world. There's a lot less red tape. There's a lot fewer people who have to sign off on it. There's a lot fewer people who have to see it. So I love when my startup founders start in the SMB world, get our learnings there. Again, if you make a $5,000 mistake, it's not a crisis. If you make a $500,000 mistake, it's a crisis. At seed funding or bootstrapping or a Series A. All right. I do think that you have to look for startup personalities, personas, and fit. Christyism's on the page. You have to be more willow than oak. Okay, I ask questions like this. Tell me the last time that your boss came to you and introduced a new major change, or your company introduced a new major change, and tell me how you felt about it. Okay? We are pivoting all the time. We are testing out new messaging all the time. We are changing our pricing all the time. If people need a dress code and a handbook, not a good fit, right? And they're just not everybody is a good startup fit. I'm probably on the really structured side for startups. I've gotten more comfortable with being uncomfortable. But in my younger years, I spent all that time in retail, and it worked real well for me. I was working for a Fortune 500 company. We had rules. This person had to sign it before this person could sign it, before this person signed it, before I could take to purchasing, right? I was very structured. I love the black and white, right? Do they like black and white? Do they like gray? There are interview questions that you can ask to determine if they're a startup fit, okay? One of the other questions I ask is, tell me the last time you did something outside of your job role voluntarily. Startups are all about the multiple hat wearing, right? Always wearing multiple hats. Understand the market. Again, what are you going to have to pay? If you're not sure, call me. I'll tell you. Midwestern friendly, right? Again, now we're hiring from everywhere, right? I didn't have clients in Bucharest, Romania before pandemic, or the UK, or Israel, or any of the other places that I've been working. But the world's different. And now I don't care necessarily where I even hire people from. But it's hard to build culture that way. It's hard to onboard people. It's harder to hold them accountable. So where do you want to get them from? What kind of prior experience do they need? And what are you going to have to pay them when they get there? Okay, the interview process. I have a process for this, of course. I have it written out. Here's my interview process. If you need more detail, you'll call me or you'll link in with me and we will talk on the phone. I post a job on LinkedIn. I said I wasn't a recruiter and I don't source, and I don't. But 40% of my business comes from hiring help, which I define as project managing the hiring process for my clients. I handhold them through the entire thing. I write the job description. Then we post on LinkedIn and then we promote it. We're not going to spend more than $25 or $35 a day. And we're only going to do that for 2 or 3 days because why? I'm going to have 250 resumes in my inbox in the first 18 to 36 hours. And then I'm going to cut it off. I have a team of former VPs of sales and recruiters. They're going to go through all the resumes that come through. We're going to separate the wheat from the chaff. And then we're going to go phone screen. It's a 30-minute phone screen. I'm going to ask them the following 3 questions about 1 to 3 jobs, depending on if they're fresh out of college or not. Tell me what your compensation structure was. I cannot ask them what they're making. It's illegal. Okay? It's a illegal question. What's your compensation structure? Meaning, again, were you 50-50? Were you 75-25? Were there bonuses? And then I can ask, tell me how you got paid variably. What was the variable compensation? Was it 10% of gross revenue? Was it on gross margin? Like, I need to know that. I want to know that, right? Then I ask them this. Tell me how you left the company better than you found it. And then I ask them the third question. Well, if things were so great, why'd you leave? Right? RFC, reason for change. Here's what I'm looking for. Step change. Okay, A players go here, then they get maxed. Then they have to go somewhere else to get to the next level. Then they have to go somewhere else. So A players make very strategic business leaps in their career. It's not a job. A players have careers, even in sales. They have a sales career. They're professional salespeople with professional sales careers. And they make the right moves at the right time to better themselves and get them to the top 10%. Okay? Interview process, who's going to be involved? Not just you, okay? Again, Sam, my poor Sam out of the East Coast, interviewed a guy actually from locally that I actually knew. He'd worked for a company that I had been the VP of sales at, and I knew him anecdotally through people, and he was qualified. After the interview, we got off the phone and Sam says to me, just don't know if I want to have a beer with him. Zoom doesn't allow you to strangle people, which is probably a good thing. And I was like, for real, for real? Like, if he can bring you $1 million, can you forego a beer? Can we find you someone else to have a beer with? I mean, for the love. I'm working really hard here. I found you a qualified candidate. If that's I couldn't talk him out of it, right? And so you have quirks. He had quirks. The other quirk he had is if the candidate at the end of the interview asked the following question, is there anything that you heard today that would stop me from moving forward in the process? Sam saw that as a lack of confidence. I couldn't talk him out of it. And every time it happened, I was like, shit.
Was he able to find a proper candidate?
Oh, yeah, we found him somebody. It took 5 months. My typical hiring gig is 5 weeks. I get paid half up front and half when the offer letter signed. Oh, yeah, we were going to find him somebody. So I didn't get the second half of my money until we did.
Another question about that. So how do you approach like diversity and inclusion? So like if we're with people who always look like us, that we always have beers with, how do we find talented people who don't look like us?
It's not easy, and I'll be real frank here. I have a biracial child, so I feel the pain. SAS loves white men. Oh, we love our white men. VCs love VCs, it's a VC problem initially, right? The majority of VCs are filled with white men in their 50s or 60s, right? And then they fund founders, white men in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Go ahead.
98%. They fund 98%. Women of color get 30.35%.
The struggle is real, right? The struggle is real. So here's the deal. Here, and I can't, again, from a legal standpoint, we can have private conversations, my clients and I, about what they're looking for, but it gets real tricky. If I get 250 resumes for a hunter position, I might get 3 women, and they're gonna be white. I might get 2 or 3 black men out of 250. And this is our fault. Like we as startup founders and consultants who work in startup and VCs, this is our fault. One of the things I've started putting at the end of job descriptions, and I can get you the exact language, but goes along something like this. Hey, listen, you probably don't meet every requirement on here. And we are looking for, so let me stop a minute. How much time do I have left? Because I can go down this rabbit hole real fast. Okay, good, okay. Let's talk real quickly about something that's not on the piece of paper. Let's talk cultural fit versus cultural add, which is what I think you're talking about. There are also good statistics around your company's success when your company is diverse, right? So if you have people who have disabilities, if you have people who have different religious beliefs and have come from different backgrounds and have grown up differently in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. I had a client, I can't remember who it was, but on their ICP list, oh, I know who it is. It's actually the Romanian client, Vitamin Software. They're a custom development shop. And when we did their ICP exercise with them, they said prospects who've lived in other countries are more likely to buy us. Why? Because they're in Romania, right? Like that's part of their ICP. But first off, we have to go out of our way. I have to put that kind of messaging into why. So let's be real honest. If you have 27, if under your qualifications list, you've listed 27 things, let's just say you've listed 17. If women cannot check 16 of those 17, they will not apply for the job. Men will go and be able to check 7, be like, YouTube will teach me the other 10. For real. Like, it just is what it is, right? Women will undervalue themselves financially. They will take an offer without negotiating. I mean, there's a lot of things that, again, we can't fix today. But we have to go and look for those people. There's a Slack channel that I always post my jobs on when I'm working with clients. Women in sales, women in revenue, Slack channel. WIR. Rev Genius Slack channel I always post on. That has a fairly diverse. But you're going to have to go look at those things, right? You're going to have to go find the Slack channels where the diversity, inclusion, and equity people are gathering. There are groups on LinkedIn for this, right? So they won't just come to you. White men will come to you. If you want the others, you're going to have to go find them and go to them and immerse yourself into that world.
And I think it's also like that people don't always know that these careers exist.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah. No. And again, I think it's our responsibility. I teach junior achievement. It's one of my give backs. Doing this is one of my give backs, but I also believe I do junior achievement for the following reason. I teach 3rd grade and 7th grade. I want girls to see me speak. I want to get up there and tell them I own my own business. I want to get up there and tell them that I'm in sales. Every junior achievement curriculum at every grade level has a financial piece to it. So in 3rd grade, it's called My Community. And everybody gets a little bit of money. And you're the florist and you're the pizza guy, right? And you go and you buy flowers for your tables at your pizza place and she goes and buys pizza, right? But it starts really young. I'm not going to go, again, I can go down the rabbit hole pretty quickly here. But again, we have to do better. And we have to want cultural add, right? Cultural fit's real comfortable, right? But cultural add, is not. And cultural add causes tension, but there's good tension. Sales is all about tension, by the way. You don't move the rock. You can't get to close without tension. Sales, and that's why certain people hunters don't mind tension, right? Farmers and gatherers, make me a little uncomfortable, right? So it's gonna require work. There's no way of sugarcoating that, but thank you for the question.
Sorry, I know this is a rabbit hole issue, but on a different life, I feel like I was involved in a lot of interviews. And at the end of the day, technical skills, I'm an engineer, I was in engineering. That was my career, a life. copy
Yep,
bar with them.
yep.
And regardless of what box they checked, if you didn't want to be late for a flight with that person, it didn't matter to me what cultural box they checked. But if they were a pain in the ass in an interview and they displayed that, nope. And regardless of your chromosomes and your melanin content, that can be displayed.
Mhm.
And I don't know that I'd want to hang with the people, that I would necessarily want to work with, but I know that I wouldn't want to be stuck on a flight with or stuck in the airport with them. And wouldn't want to work with them in a tight, overworked space, more than 40 hours. And that being said, I know that I am a disabled veteran, so a lot of people hired me because of that. And so it's hard to meter that as I'm hiring now, that I'm looking at resumes and I'm like, yeah, that person fits. But I don't know how the secret handshake of, I don't know what skills to look for. This is very important for sales, like to be able to say, okay, the secret handshakes and they know their stuff. Cultural ads. You can see if they add culturally. I can tell if I would want to be stuck in an airport, but I don't know if I would want to build a business with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but here's the deal. I'll get into my spirituality a little bit. Reason, season, lifetime. Some people are just going to hire because the reason's right now. Some people are going to stay in your company a season, and some people may be lifers, right? Your co-founder, by the way, that's a really ugly divorce when that goes south. Everybody lawyers up. So co-founder should be a lifer, somebody you think is your life partner. You want your leaders to be seasonal, but it's okay to bring people in for a reason and then release them back into the wild, as I affectionately say. And by the way, because I have a Gen Zer in my life, 18 months is the longest you're going to keep a Zer. So if they bring somebody to the table now, to your point about toxic, well, let me just go ahead and call it toxicity, right? Toxic is never okay, and toxic gets eliminated real fast, right? And I think that's DNA a little bit, right? I think once you've been damaged to the point where that's kind of how you are inside, I think it can be solved, but you have to want to do your own work. But I think, I do think that the first sales hire is super important. And I think, though, if you hire a hunter, if you can truly identify the hunter, they come with outgoing personality. I mean, they're not pissing people off, right? And now, here's who they're pissing off. They will piss off the internal people a little bit, right? But they will not piss off your prospects or customers. They will piss off finance. They might piss off operations, right? But here's the reality. The reality is you don't get paid if if they're not successful. Salespeople are making payroll for you. So I'm when people bitch a little bit about the golf thing and the whatever, and they're very demanding, and I go, hey, I got openings on the dark side anytime. You want to come over and interview, you let me know. Not a lot of people want to do the job. It's really hard. I mean, 50% of your income is variable, and you zero out months, it happens. Every sales rep has zeroed out a month or two. And I think you can zero out 1 or 2, by the way, in 12 months and still make your quota, still hit your $1 million quota. So, but think about cultural ad. Again, and you have to be qualified first, guys. That's the problem, right? You can't go and pick someone who is of the diverse category who's only a 60% fit, right? That's setting them up to fail too. I mean, it's just not fair. But if you've got 2 or 3 candidates and you got some cultural ad opportunities, pick ad, right? They're only going to stay 18 months anyway. All right. Competencies. Again, here are resources. I'm telling you a bunch of resources I have, but you are going to have to reach out to me because I couldn't give you a whole notebook today. I have a list of 20 competencies that I give my clients when I'm doing hiring projects and say pick 8. Don't pick sales. The sales is even on there. I'm picking sales and I'm picking startup fit for you. Pick 7 or 8 more, and then I build behavioral-based questions around those competencies. What are the competencies that are most important to your company and this job? I don't know what they are, so I give them a list of 20. I'm happy to give it to you too. Do you have written interview questions? Again, legally, this is why I have a written process and why I have written interview questions, because legally we got to treat everybody the same. Do you have your interview questions written down? Do you have a scorecard? Because I don't do phone screens anymore, my people do that for me. I have a scorecard. They have to fill out the scorecard. Everybody gets asked the same questions. I can prove it, right? People are patterns. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Christy is in 1 and 2 under this. Ask them questions about how something happened in the past. How did you feel when your company changed pricing? How did you react to this? What happens when you and your manager disagree on strategy? What happens? Ask them those questions. I worked for a local startup here, again, nameless, who the founder CEO really had trouble giving the baby up. Like, still wanted regular visitation, right? And so I had an interview question I built that said, you've just come out of your VP of sales office where you guys have decided on strategy on a $100,000 client that you're going to go and get closed this month. You go to the coffee bar and you run into Mark. And Mark says, hey, super excited about the prospect you're about to bring in for $100,000. What strategy? And so you go, oh, Susan and I just talked about it. Here we go. You're so excited. And Mark says, yeah, I don't like that. We're going to have to sit down and talk about it. I asked the interview question because it's going to happen, right? Because Mark still wants visitation. So if you know you've got shit going on in your company that people are going to run into, and I don't mean just salespeople, like if you're interviewing for anything, if you know that you and your co-founder don't always agree, if you know that your finance person's a pain in the ass, like these are real life things, we might as well know how they're going to react. And they've probably run into it in the past, so you can know how they're going to react because they're going to tell you how they did it last time. Assessments, I resell assessments. I resell a series of assessments from Wiley & Sons, the book publishers out of Texas. Sales profile assessments, account management, marketing, on and on and on, hunters, gatherers, farmers, all of that. So, and they're cheap. Like this one's pretty cheap. It's Myers-Briggs meets ACT. It's a verbal math section. It's $300. I don't upcharge it because most of my startup founders don't have an assessment, but I believe you need an objective measurement, right? Even I've been hiring salespeople for longer than I'm going to share with you. I still run people through an assessment. Then for leaders, I have a husband and wife company out of the East Coast that has a high-end psychological assessments that I run people through. But I would like you to have an objective measure. How will you make the offer? Here's Christy's strategy and written process. I make the verbal offer. I say to the candidate, we're ready to make a verbal offer. Are you ready to accept or decline within 24 hours? If they say no, I say, no problem. Are you still interviewing with other companies? And they say yes. I said, great. As soon as you've had your last interview and you're ready for my verbal offer and we're willing to give me an answer in 24 hours, let me know. If they say yes, I'm ready, I go, great. Here's the verbal offer. I give it to them. Then I follow it up in writing. I said, don't need to write any of this down. I'm going to send you an email. This is not an offer letter. I'm sending them an email. Then I schedule my appointment for the next day. And then I say to them, if anything between now and tomorrow at 4 o'clock comes up, you should call me. Here's my cell phone. I go to bed at 10, right? I want to negotiate that in between. Thank you. So then, the next day, negotiation has probably already happened. They have got questions about insurance, whatever. Like, I'm the consultant. Like, how much you're going to pay in your premium, I don't have any idea about that kind of stuff. But I try to get that stuff from my client for them. Then we say yes. At that point, when they say yes, I go, great, let's negotiate and agree on start date. Then we negotiate and agree on that. Then I go, cool. Expect your written offer in the next 12 hours, and I'm expecting that back in 24 hours or less. Okay? Here's why. I'm sure again, for those of you in sales, you've already figured this out. I learned long ago the hard way that we don't give offers to people who are still interviewing because they use my offer against me. So until they're ready to say yes in 24 hours, there's no number. By the way, the same strategy works for me with prospects. While I'm putting contracts together for my own clients or when I'm teaching this to my clients, if somebody says, yep, we're ready, like, yep, sounds good, let's send over the contract. And I said, great, so you're ready to sign and return it in 24 hours? Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I just got to run it by finance. Well, we're not ready. I got to talk to my boss one last time. We're not ready. Again, like contracts that used to sit on desks for weeks or on legal's desk for weeks, no. And every one of the contracts you send out should expire within 15 to 30 days. Never, ever, ever send an open-ended contract out that doesn't have an expiration date. Okay? That's your excuse for creating urgency. Let's see. We talked about that. Legal compliance, we talked about that. Again, I'm not your legal expert, by the way. Despite the fact, as Brene Brown says, I've watched a lot of Law and Order. I am still not qualified. Negotiations, how are you going to handle that? Have a cap. Have it in your mind, right? And again, a lot of times I don't always play the game like, I'm like, hey, if I know we're going to go with $70,000 is the base salary we're looking for, I don't normally offer 60. I don't like to play the game. But I do like a little wiggle room. Like, I like a little 10% wiggle room myself with my clients. I'm not going to lose, and I'd say to them, like, tell me we're not going to lose a good client, an A player, over $5,000. Just tell me we're not going to do that. If they say, no, we're not going to do that, I said, that's great. So we're still going to go in with 70,000. If we have to go to 75, go to 75. But know what your top end is, right? Know where you're at. And know what your give-gets are. 40% base salary versus 60% variable. Equity. Everybody wants equity. Again, it's hilarious to me. Everybody wants equity. Nobody stays longer than 18 months, remember? Vesting is 4 years. Like, why do you care about equity? You're never around when it comes to fruition. Onboarding process in the last 5 minutes here. Here's the gig. Please do not spend all of this time and all of your energy hiring an A player and then giving them shitty onboarding. Like, first impressions matter. Buyer's remorse is real with candidates just like it does with people who are buying your product. Please make sure that their laptop has been shipped to them days ahead of time. All of their passwords, all of the systems, all of the logins and passwords of the systems are there. I put together for my clients, so as part of my hiring package, 2 weeks of onboarding support, I put together an hour-by-hour, day-by-day schedule for the first 2 weeks. That includes the meet and greets. That includes when we're going to talk about discovery. That includes when I'm going to teach them HubSpot. And then I do it 3 ways, actually. Self-directed training. So before I teach them HubSpot, I make them go through the HubSpot Academy. Self-directed training, instructor-led training. Everybody customizes their CRM, so now I'm going to tell them how we customize our CRM. And then OJT, right? They're going to watch somebody do it, or I'm going to give them something, give them some practicum, right? So you can fill 2 weeks, hour by hour, and I teach them 4 things as well. So we do product training, all the 3 ways I just mentioned. We do industry training, all the 3 ways I just mentioned. Sales tools, sales process. If you take those 4 times the 3, there's plenty, and then all the meet and greets and all the other meetings that are going to go on and all that other stuff, there's plenty to keep them busy for 2 weeks. The last thing you want somebody doing, particularly virtually, is sitting at home in front of their computer, feeling guilty to go spend an hour at lunch, but they have nothing to do anyway, and but they're afraid to get up from their computer. Awful. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. I have a hard stop at 10 because my social media company has asked me to do an Instagram Live at 10 a.m. So I'm going to take questions. I also need to we're going to do a selfie for my social media company. But what questions can I take before then?
You mentioned CRMs. What CRMs do you like that are, because a lot of the people in the room are fresh, starting up, right? What CRMs do you like that have good sales processes baked in that are easy to build out of box?
HubSpot's free. HubSpot's really the only free that I would recommend. Apollo, HubSpot. Again, if you're a Salesforce customer, my apologies. I have been a Salesforce customer. Nobody needs Salesforce at this point, right? No one needs Zoho at this point. No one needs any complex whatever. The reason I love HubSpot is the following. It also has marketing automation built in. So it's your one-stop shop for CRM and marketing automation. So when a lead comes in through marketing, it automatically gets transferred over to the sales CRM side, right? Now, Salesforce has that too. Pardot, but there's a lot of those. But again, from ease of use, setup, cheap, they have a startup discount. Apollo comes with a database, which is kind of a bonus. HubSpot doesn't come with a database. We talked about that, right? Like ZoomInfo, Cadillac, Seamless.ai, lots of others out there. Again, great databases if you can get your hands on them, by the way, are also attendee lists at trade shows. If you've been to a trade show, like if you exhibited or whatever, or you can buy those are your people, right? If they went to your association trade show, those are your people. Thank you. Others?
I'll throw another one out.
Go for it.
So you're talking about sales and RepView. Are you familiar with RepView, the website, REPVUE?
I'm not.
No? Okay. Well, I was going to ask your thoughts on that. So it's a great site, it's a great resource, shows what OTE should be for certain sales positions within certain companies, the percentage or estimated percentage of people that actually hit OTE. I was going to get your opinion on it, but we can talk.
You can call me afterwards. Yeah, and by the way, only 60-ish% of reps are hitting quota. It's because VCs have forced us to put quotas in place that are not realistic. So although we do fire reps at that percentage, it's a little bit of setting them up for failure. So be real careful about, again, ramp up and quota, particularly in year one, right? We don't want to scare off a good rep just because, you know, we were too afraid to push back on the VC that just gave us funding and say, like, I don't think $5 million in year one or year two is realistic. Yes, ma'am.
How about metrics? If you're hiring that very first SDR and they're in HubSpot, how do you set up some metrics and even the goals? Like just your very initial step forward.
Yeah, it's a longer conversation, but here's what I don't do. I'm the anomaly girl again, and again, I've built out SDR, 2 times I built out SDR teams from 0, one at Gainsight, 0 to 13, and cybersecurity company here in town, last Q4, I hired 20 SDRs for them and 2 SDR leaders. And so I don't care how many calls you make, I don't care how many emails you send. And the reason I don't is because I use cadences and sequences, and every day you have to put 20 new people in. If you put 20 new people in a day and 100 people a week, it automatically gets to 50 to 60 calls a day and the same amount of emails. So all I ask them, every week I'm only tracking, like, did you put 100 new people in your cadence or your sequence? The rest takes care of itself. It's a really easy one metric. Again, as far as how many appointments, it depends on your industry. 12 to 15 appointments a month is standard in SaaS for SDRs, BDRs, but like there are variables to that changes based on certain things. Yes, sir.
If I'm onboarding a brand rep, what's the going percentage for that brand rep as far as commission base? What?
Are you talking about an account executive? Like a quota-carrying hunter? Yeah, 8 to 12% of gross. Very few companies are doing gross margin. Companies who are doing gross margin are companies that don't have much margin in general, and that's important to them. By the way, renewal rates, somewhere between 2 and 4% for customer success account management, right? Again, not the hard job, the easier job. But we also do that, so sometimes you do 2 to 4% of gross for account management, customer success. More likely, you're doing retention rate, right? If your retention rate is 95 to 100, you're getting X dollars, 100 to 105, X dollars, that type of thing. Okay, quick selfie and then I'll let them go.
Yes, not a problem. Well, let's give Chrissy a round of applause.
Thank you. Okay.